The restaurant hummed with the soft clatter of silverware and murmured conversations, but Sarah Mitchell heard none of it. She sat frozen at table 14, staring at the empty chair across from her, watching the condensation slowly drip down her untouched water glass. 37 minutes. That's how long she'd been waiting, checking her phone every 45 seconds, pretending to scroll through messages that weren't there. The pitying glances from the waitress were becoming unbearable. Her best friend Emma had sworn this blind date would be different. That Derek was a genuinely nice guy who wouldn't judge her for being a kindergarten teacher instead of a corporate lawyer, wouldn't care that she drove a 10-year-old Honda instead of a Tesla. But the empty chair told a different story, one Sarah knew by heart. She'd been stood up before, but somehow this rejection cut deeper, maybe because she'd actually allowed herself to hope this time. Her phone finally buzzed. Not a call, just a text. "Sorry, something came up. You seem nice, but I don't think this will work. Out." Sarah's throat tightened as she read the words again. Something came up. He hadn't even bothered to craft a believable lie. She'd seen him, though, just for a moment when he'd walked in 20 minutes ago. She'd watched his eyes scan the restaurant, land on her with her clearance rack dress and nervously picked nail polish, then immediately check his phone before turning around and walking right back out. He'd taken one look at her and decided she wasn't worth his time. "Miss, would you like to order?" Or... The waitress's voice was gentle, almost maternal, which somehow made everything worse. Sarah felt the familiar sting behind her eyes, that warning pressure that meant tears were seconds away. Not here. Not in front of all these people on their successful dates, laughing and holding hands and being chosen. "I'll just take the check for the water," Sarah managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached for her purse, fingers fumbling with the zipper, vision blurring. This was it. She was done with dating, done with apps and setups and blind dates. That left her feeling like she was fundamentally unworthy of love. She'd adopt a cat, maybe two, and embrace the spinster teacher life everyone probably expected anyway. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" The voice made Sarah look up sharply, confusion cutting through her misery. A man stood beside her table, tall and distinguished, probably in his early 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a suit that even Sarah's untrained eye recognized as expensive, the kind of tailoring that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. What?" Sarah blinked, glancing around the restaurant. There were empty tables everywhere. Why would he want to sit here, at her table of rejection and humiliation? "I'm sorry to intrude," the man said, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed genuine. "But I couldn't help noticing you've been sitting alone, and I've been watching something that I think you should know about." He gestured toward the entrance. "The man who walked in earlier looked at you and left? I saw him do it, and I saw him outside on his phone, laughing with his friends about how he dodged a bullet. I'm sorry. You deserve to know you weren't imagining things." Sarah's breath caught. So she'd been right. Derek had taken one look and decided she wasn't pretty enough, successful enough of anything. Somehow, having it confirmed out loud was both validating and devastating. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. The man smiled, pulling out the chair across from her. "Because 25 years ago, I was that guy. Not exactly like him, but close enough. I was young, ambitious, shallow in ways I didn't even recognize. I stood up a woman because I'd heard she was a school librarian, and I thought I deserved someone more impressive. Someone who matched my bank account." He sat down without waiting for permission, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. 3 years later, I met her again at a charity event. She was volunteering, reading to sick children at the hospital, and I watched her bring light into those kids. Eyes with nothing but a picture book and her kindness. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. I tried to apologize to ask her out properly, and you know what she told me? Sarah shook her head, transfixed despite herself. She said she'd dodged a bullet when I didn't show up, because she deserved someone who saw her value from the start. She married a high school music teacher 6 months later, and they're still together, still happy, still changing lives every day while He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "While I built an empire that means nothing when I come home to an empty penthouse." "I don't understand why you're telling me this," Sarah said softly. "I'm nobody. I teach 5-year-olds their ABCs. I live in a studio apartment with a leaky faucet I keep meaning to fix. I'm exactly the kind of person people like you or that guy don't see. No, the man said firmly. You're exactly the kind of person people like me spend our whole lives looking for and missing because we're too blind to see what matters. He pulled out his phone, scrolling for a moment before turning it to face her. That's you, isn't it? Sarah stared at the image, her heart stuttering. It was a photo from 3 weeks ago at the grocery store. She was kneeling on the floor, next to a little boy who'd dropped a jar of pasta sauce. The red splatter everywhere, the child crying. In the photo, Sarah was making a funny face, clearly trying to make the boy laugh, while his embarrassed mother cleaned up the mess. How do you have this? Sarah's voice came out sharper than intended. That's my assistant's nephew, Marcus. His mother couldn't stop talking about the kind woman who'd turned what could have been a traumatic moment into an adventure. She posted it in our company's family group chat, talking about how rare kindness like that was. He put the phone away. When I saw you sitting here tonight, I recognized you immediately. And then I watched that fool reject you. And I thought about that librarian, about all the meaningful connections I've destroyed because I was chasing the wrong things, the waitress returned, looking uncertain. The man barely glanced at her. Please bring us your finest bottle of wine and 2 of whatever. Your chef recommends tonight. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? Sarah asked, bewildered. Celebrating that I'm finally going to do something right. He leaned forward, his expression intense, but not frightening. Passionate, but not pushy. My name is James Whitmore. I own a commercial, real estate company you've probably never heard of because I'm boring, and I work too much. I've been married twice to women who loved my money more than they loved me, and I have no children because I was always too busy building something that can't love me back. Sarah's mind reeled. James Whitmore. She had heard that name. Anyone who read the business section had heard that name. He was worth billions, literally billions, and he was sitting at her table in this mid-range Italian restaurant like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm going to say something crazy now, James continued. Something that will probably make you think I've lost my mind. And maybe I have, but I'm 53 years old, and I've learned that the moments you regret most are the ones where you knew what was right and didn't have the courage to reach for it. He took a breath, his hands steady on the white tablecloth. Marry me. Sarah's laugh burst out involuntarily, almost hysterical. You can't be serious. You don't even know me. I don't know you. This is insane. You're right, it is insane, James agreed. But answer me this. Why were you on that blind date tonight? What were you hoping to find? Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it, thinking. I wanted someone who saw me, someone who valued the things I value. Kindness, stability, making a difference, even if it's small. I wanted someone who wouldn't make me feel like I need to be different to be worth loving. And that man who stood you up, if he'd come in and sat down, would he have been that person? No, Sarah admitted quietly. Probably not. Emma means well, but she keeps setting me up with these ambitious guys who think teaching is something you do until you find a real career. I would sign a prenuptial agreement. That gives you everything if things don't work out, James said, his voice calm and certain. You would never have to work again unless you wanted to. Though I hope you'd keep teaching because the world needs more people like you in it. I would ask nothing from you, except the chance to learn what it means to build a life around something real, instead of something profitable. Sarah stared at him, her heart hammering. This couldn't be happening. People didn't propose to strangers in restaurants. Billionaires didn't choose elementary school teachers they'd seen in a photo. This was the plot of a romance novel, not real life. You could say no, James added. You probably should say no. But you could also say yes to 6 months of getting to know each other, living in separate spaces, no pressure, no expectations except honesty. If at the end of 6 months you feel nothing and want to walk away, you'll walk away with enough money to buy any house you want, travel anywhere you dream of going, or donate it all to your school. And if you feel something, even just the possibility of something, we can see where it goes. Why? Sarah whispered. Why me? Why now? Because I watched you make a child smile in the middle of his worst moment. Because you're sitting here in a restaurant where someone rejected you, and instead of being angry or bitter, you just look sad. Like you're disappointed in yourself instead of him. Because I've spent 25 years building wealth and losing. Everything that actually matters. And I'm tired of being the villain in my own story. He paused, his eyes searching hers. And because something in my gut tells me that if I let you walk out of here tonight, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what if. The waitress returned with wine and 2 steaming plates of pasta that smelled like heaven. She set them down carefully, her eyes darting between Sarah and James with barely concealed curiosity. The other diners had stopped pretending not to watch. Sarah could feel their attention like a physical weight. "This is crazy," Sarah said again, but her voice had lost its conviction. She thought about her studio apartment, about the leaky faucet and the stack of bills on her counter. She thought about her classroom with its ancient computers and worn books, about the kids who came to school hungry because their parents worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. She thought about Derek walking out, about all the Dereks before him, about dying alone and wondering if she'd been too practical, too careful, too afraid to take a chance on something impossible. "What would people think?" she asked. "What would your family say, your friends, your business associates?" "They'd assume I was a gold digger, that I trapped you somehow." "Let them think what they want," James said simply. "I've spent my whole life caring what people think, building a reputation, maintaining an image. It hasn't made me happy. Maybe it's time to try something different." Sarah picked up her wine glass, the crystal heavy in her hand. 6 months? 6 months. Separate apartments in the same building if you want. Coffee every morning, dinner whenever you're free. Complete transparency about our lives and what we want from them. At the end, we decide together what happens next. And if I say no right now, then I'll pay for your dinner. Apologize for the intrusion, and you'll never hear from me again. Though I'd like to make a substantial anonymous donation to your school either way. If you'll tell me which one? Sarah took a sip of wine. It tasted like Starlight if Starlight had a taste. Smooth and perfect and utterly unlike the $7 bottles she bought for special occasions. She thought about her mother, who'd worked herself to exhaustion and died at 52 with nothing to show for her sacrifices except a daughter who was following in her footsteps. She thought about the woman James had mentioned, the librarian who'd married the music teacher and changed lives every day. "I'm not going to change," she said finally. "I'm not going to become someone sophisticated or polished or any of the things your ex-wives probably were. I'm going to keep teaching, keep making silly faces at crying kids in grocery stores, keep being exactly who I am." "I'm counting on it," James said, and his smile was so genuine, so full of hope and vulnerability, that Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. "Then yes," she whispered. "Yes to 6 months of getting to know each other. Yes to the possibility of something impossible.